You can have anything that you want. When I hear those words, it reminds me of Solomon's dream where God said these words to him. It reminds me of Jesus saying, anything that you ask for, you can receive. But mainly when I hear, you can have anything you want, it reminds me of my mother. Not that I ever heard those words from her when I was a kid, but it's words that she has frequently said to my 5 children every month when we would take them to the Dollar Tree. You know the Dollar Tree, right? Where everything is only $1. And before we would go in, she would round up all 5 of her grandkids and say, you can have anything you want in the whole store as long as you ask Granny for it first. And my kids would be so excited and they would head into the store and wander up and down every single aisle looking at everything from socks to toilet paper, from notepads to wrapping paper, because when you can have anything, then you have to look at everything. And finally, eventually, they would settle into the toy aisle or the candy aisle. And on some days, when it was particularly difficult to make a decision between the iced animal crackers and the pink sparkly hula hoop, they found out that maybe they could have both if they asked Granny for it. As they got a little older, the wonder of these trips seemed to wear off somewhat. I suppose that they began to realize that when you can have anything in a place where everything is only $1, it wasn't quite as thrilling anymore. Ask for whatever you want me to give you, the Lord tells Solomon in a dream. And Solomon's request is one that we are very familiar with, wisdom. Today I want to share with you some of these verses from 1 Kings chapter 3, verses 4 through 15. The king went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices, for that was the most important high place. And Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, ask for whatever you want me to give you. Solomon answered, you have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and have given him a son to sit on the throne this very day. Now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people that you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, since you have asked for this, and not for a long life or wealth for yourself, nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never be anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience to me and keep my decrees and commands as David your father did, then I will give you a long life. And then Solomon awoke, and he realized it had been a dream. He returned to Jerusalem, stood before the ark of the Lord's covenant, and sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, and then he gave a feast for all of his court. You can have anything that you want. I believe that this dream encounter that Solomon had with the God at Gibeon can help us today as pastors, and in particular can help guide us and lead us into a more innovative pastoral leadership, especially given the light of the realities of the world in which we are living in right now. Now, I know that sometimes when we hear the word innovative, it conjures up scary images of, change. And innovation is often understood in terms of what is new ideas, new methods, and new strategies. And that can be part of it, but true innovation is often building off of where we are. It's building off of what has already worked in the past. Innovation is seeing where we are continually as a starting point and not as a final destination. Innovation is never static. It is ever adaptive. Imagine for a minute this bold declaration of God being made to us. Ask for whatever you want me to give you. What would we say to such a statement? What would we ask for as United Methodist pastors in 2020? What could we ask for in regards to the churches that we serve, to the people whom we serve? If I had been asked this question in 2008, it would have been easy. It was my first appointment, and I knew exactly what I needed God to give me. Or rather, I thought I knew what I needed God to do. Or maybe another way of saying it is I really thought that I knew who God needed to fix. And her name was Sue. If I had heard, ask for whatever you want me to give you, it would have been a simple request. Put Sue somewhere else. Maybe in the Baptist church down the road, or even the Church of Christ, just anywhere but here. Truth be told, it was the confrontations with Sue. It was the shattering of my preconceived pastoral ideals by Sue. It was the increased amount of time that I spent in prayer because of Sue that was really so beneficial to me early on. I could not have answered what I wanted God to give me at that time because, I don't think I really knew. So how does all of this help us be more innovative in our pastoral leadership? Well, before God came to Solomon in a dream, it was Solomon who sought God in worship, going to Gibeon and offering 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. Ellen Davis said that, quote, "It is in the act of worship that the church steadily renews itself in the discipline of wisdom." Check that out again. It is in the act of worship that the church steadily renews itself in the discipline of wisdom. It is in the act of worship. Many things are different now than they were in early March. Many things have been canceled and many things have been so changed that they don't even hardly resemble what they were before. And yet there is one true constant. There is one unchangeable. There is one immutable. There is one eternal stability in our lives, and that is Jesus, the one who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Our worship services have been perhaps forever changed by COVID-19. And even though the orders of worship have been altered, even though the predictability of our services has been upended, even though the normality of our Sunday mornings has pushed us into wearing more hats and even perhaps more roles than we ever thought imaginable as pastors, as well as maybe even pastor spouses, the reason why we worship has not changed. Seeking God in worship and in prayer is still the first step in hearing what it is that God has to say to us. Before we ask God for anything, before we can do anything for God, we must first be still and listen to what God is asking of us, perhaps even offering to us. That's probably why God visited so many men in scriptures in dreams. Maybe that's one of the only times that we are still enough to actually listen. Innovative pastoral leadership still begins in prayer, in worship, and in listening. It's about relationships, and our primary relationship is with God. Perhaps one of the keys to pastoral leadership today is not knowing what we know, but rather knowing what we don't know. Solomon's initial response to God's offer was to recount God's past faithfulness and kindness to his father David, the Hesed of God, that is now being extended to Solomon himself. And then the king says, "I am only a little child. I do not know how to carry out my duties." As pastors, we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes we think we know more than we actually do. One of the greatest gifts in my ministry was given to me in my second appointment, where I had the opportunity to serve as an associate pastor to a retired bishop, Richard Looney, who in retirement had taken to serve a small rural church in Telford, Tennessee. Having a wise and trusted mentor could be one of the greatest gifts that we ever get as a pastor. Now, I know that local pastors and provisional members shall be assigned a clergy mentor by their board of ordained ministry. But mentoring is an area where we could be so much better. A safe place where we could honestly say, I don't know what I don't know, so tell me. Innovative pastoral leadership involves innovative pastoral care, intentional pastoral care, and training. But really this comes down to an initiative for each of us as pastors. I didn't have a great mentor relationship my first 4 years in ministry, so I should have asked. I could have sought out the leadership and mentorship of a clergy colleague that I admired, but I didn't do that. So if you don't have a mentor today, if you're not in a strong mentor relationship today, or the relationship you're in is not really effective for your growth, then I would encourage you to ask for help. If I had talked to Sue before I began making changes to the worship services that she had been part of for over 60 years, or at the very least, if I had sought to understand why the changes that I was making was causing such an emotional reaction in her, then maybe our relationship would have begun quite differently. Dean Gregory Jones said in a lecture last year that, quote, change is important, but knowing what to keep is more important. We have been pushed into some scary feeling changes this year. And we have made some changes that we would never have made if we had not been forced to make them. As long as Jesus, though, stays at the center of all of these changes, of all that we are doing, and we're really focused on loving our neighbor by feeding and clothing and visiting and housing them, then the main thing will stay the main thing, and all the other things will adapt to the needs of today, the needs of the ministries, of the right here and the right now. Jesus said, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these other things will be given to you as well. We don't know what we don't know, and that's okay, as long as we don't presume to know more than we do. And so Solomon asks for wisdom to govern the people where God has placed him, a discerning heart to distinguish between right and wrong, between good and evil, and to administer justice, to do what is right, and to ensure that what is right is what is being done. And then in the second half of chapter 3, Solomon gets this wisdom put to the test. Simon Sinek would say that Solomon's what that he asked for is reflected in the deeper why that is in Solomon's heart. Ask for whatever you want me to give you. Solomon could have been dumbfounded by the magnitude of this. He could have been overwhelmed by the enormity of the options. When you can have anything in the whole store, our tendency is to go up and down every aisle and look at everything, even many things that we simply don't need. So Solomon asks to be the leader that God will equip him to be. The leadership and the throne was given to Solomon by God anyway, and so it makes sense that the tools that Solomon needs will be provided by God as well. And perhaps that hasn't changed, even today. Seeking God in prayer and worship, admitting what we don't know, and asking boldly for God's guidance and wisdom to be his servant leader to the people that he has appointed us to lead. These are not just a summary of Solomon's gift of wisdom. These are steps that we can implement in our own leadership roles today to be the transformational servant leaders that God has called us to be, who God is equipping us to be. right here, right now. So ask for whatever you want him to give you and trust that he will give you what you ask for. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.